This may be my most ambitious project yet. I'm going to try and make a Tiffany lamp. I haven't worked with stained glass before and I barely know anything about it, but as makers I think it's great to challenge ourselves as it keeps things exciting. While researching, I came across the Christie's auction website and I got a bit obsessed. There's hundreds of Tiffany lamps listed, some going for hundreds of thousands, even millions. Originally they were created by Louis Comfort Tiffany in New York and the originals were made up until around 1930. They're super intricate and super collectible. I found myself drawn to the more geometric designs over the floral ones, but they're all made up of a crazy amount of tiny pieces of glass, so this is going to take some serious work. The first thing I need is a mould. I'm making it from this foam board, so let's get straight into it. I thought about making it from wood, but this will be easier, and it would have required a fair amount of wood as this is surprisingly quite a mass. I've got it to a rough shape. To get it a bit more concentric, I'll finish it on the lathe. I'm not sure that I need to do this next step, but I'm going to coat it in plaster. Later in the project, I'll be soldering the glass pieces together on top of the form, and I'm unsure if the foam will melt into a gooey mess. It will also give me a good base to mark out the design. It took 2 full days for it to dry, which was a real pain. I also went through the plaster in a couple of places while sanding it, but that doesn't really matter. Next, I'll mark out the design. I'm planning on marking around so far, and then when I come to solder the pieces, I'll do that in sections and then solder those sections together later on. I don't know if this is a good idea or not, as I really don't know what I'm doing, but as long as there's some sort of plan, then I should have a chance of it working. Now I've got the design, I'll transfer that onto paper, and from there I can use that to cut the tiles. I'm just straightening them up and making them a bit clearer. There's 2 columns in the design. They're very similar. The only difference is in the upper section where the tiles are offset. Now I have the templates, I can start cutting some glass. I've decided to cut another template from the template out of plastic sheet, and I can use that to mark out the tiles. I think if I've counted right, that there's 820 tiles in the whole design, so this is going to be a lot of work. All of these tiles also need grinding along every edge. You can get a proper glass grinder, but I've put together this setup. It's just a container filled with water, a plastic chopping board for a bed, and a Dremel attached from above with a cheap diamond burr. The diamond burr is working great, and I'm also using the plastic template to size them all and keep them consistent. Here's one before it's ground and then one that has been. It does grind the glass with ease, but I could have maybe cut the tiles slightly closer to the lines, not by much though, and although it works well, I wouldn't say that it's a quick process. The small ones are fiddly, but still totally doable, and if you're worried about how close my fingers are to the bird, then you really don't need to be. You can run your finger over it with no effect at all. That's the first band done, 20 of each, which is enough to get all the way around. There's heaps more to go, not just in the tiles and the shade, but also in the base as well. This could take weeks to make, so to lighten the load, I'll cut the rest of the tiles on the Wazer. The first thing I need to do is scan the template, then from that make files for the Wazer to work with. I think it's pretty cool though that the digital files do come from a handmade template. I've traced over the scan manually with a pen tool, so now I can split that up and put each tile into its own layer. From there I can export the tiles out and send them over to Wazercam, which is the software to prepare the files ready to cut them on the Wazer. I've chosen the material settings and also added tabs, and one last thing I've decided to do is cut the pieces on the center line. If I cut on the outside, the pieces will be the exact size, but cutting them on the center line will make them a touch smaller, and I think that'll give me a bit of wiggle room when I come to put them together. Because this type of glass is quite weak, clamping it down to the bed will put stress on the sheet and it could crack. I've made these clamping pads to lift the sheet off the bed, which should help to reduce the stress. The slightest stress on the sheet could crack it, especially as more tiles are cut, making it weaker all the time. I need 20 of each tile in the upper section of the lamp, but I'll cut 10 first just to see how that goes. It went great, so I did the next 10. The only thing that I changed was to make the tabs slightly smaller. The default was 3mm and I made them 2. I've sped the footage up, but this section here is the actual speed. It really is very quick. It did 10 of them in around 3 minutes. It really does do a nice job, but if you've seen any of my past videos, you'd know that I'd be more than happy to make these by hand, but then the video could take 5 or 6 weeks to make. I do still need to grind off the tab, but that only takes 2 seconds, so this really is where the biggest saving of time will be. I'll lay the tiles out as I make them, so I've printed out a full-size template. Now I need to really get going on it, but I do need a bit of a plan. I'm going to work on this section here at the top that comes down to these diamond sort of shapes. And this section goes from dark up here down to light. This is what I've got to make that happen. I've already started with the darker one, and at the other end of the scale I've got this one here. So I think I'm going to take that one next and start with the bottom row and then work from both ways towards each other. Even though the first tiles cut well, I did read that putting a piece of sacrificial core flute underneath the glass works well, and it supports the middle of the sheet as it becomes weaker with all the cuts. My concerns about the glass cracking have been realised. The core flute didn't work, so I'll go back to the original method of just the standoffs. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I'm watching it just in case it cracks and then I can stop the machine. So far it seems pretty good, but I think the answer may be to use smaller sheets. There'd be less tension on there, but so far it is looking good. I spoke too soon, and I think I was lucky on that dark green glass. It really does do an excellent job. I just need to work out the best method of holding the glass without putting tension on it. A handful of them worked, so I'll cut the rest of them, and I've thought of a totally different method, so I'll try that out next. I'll cut the glass to the size that I need, which straight away will reduce the stress. I'll then attach it to a piece of core flute with hot glue, and I'll screw the core flute down to the bed, not the glass. So as long as the hot glue holds, there'll be no stress from the screws on the glass at all. That seems like it's the go, and I reckon I'm confident enough now to do the rest using this method. I'll grind the tabs off these ones while the next ones are cutting, and this method should work out well. So I just wanted to mention that I hope these videos are inspiring you to get into your own workshop and maybe making something that you haven't tried before, but just being in there and using your hands and your brain is what it's all about. It really is time well spent, and it's super satisfying at the end of a project. These videos aren't about look at what I can do, they're about what anyone can do. I say it all of the time, I'm no expert, I don't even know what I'm doing, and even if I didn't make these videos, I'd still be making these projects. I'm actually quite selfish, as I generally make what I want to make, and I'm not making it for the algorithm. I make the project for me and I make the video for you, so hopefully you're enjoying it. I'm stopping and checking on the Wazer, but there's no issues now, and I'm confident that I can leave it to do its thing. I've decided to do some of the middle tiles next with the light green glass. It did an amazing job again. I've cut a few different green tiles, and I just wanted to show you that I have been working out the darker and lighter areas from the full sheet of glass for each row of tiles, just to help with the transition from dark to light. I reckon it's looking pretty good, but there's still a bit to go to make them transition from dark to light. So what I'm going to do next is dot the odd one on this row with this colour, and then the opposite way around on this row I'll start putting some of these medium colour ones in just randomly and hopefully bring that together, and then I'll do the same in the top section between the dark tiles and the medium ones. I don't think that it's working quite right. These green tiles that I've dotted in here are too far down. It needs to be more solid with this colour here, so I need to get another sheet of that glass and then move the whole transition further up. So I'll have to replace some of these as well. And I'm not sure yet, but I may even get rid of the dark colour and just use the two, but I'll see how that goes. I've decided to do away with the masking tape, and I'm going to glue all the way around the edges of the glass and see how that holds. That worked perfect, so that's now the new process. I've replaced the odd tiles as well. I will put more in later on, but I've decided to fill the whole thing out and make each row consistent in colour. Then I'll recut and put a few in here and there afterwards. I've also decided on keeping the dark green tiles. The top section's complete, but I reckon it looks a bit uniform, so just for a visual, I'll swap a few tiles to give me an idea of how it will look with some random ones. I reckon that looks better, but obviously I can't use these tiles, so I'll get on and remake them. That feels like the first major point of the project. It took a few days to cut them, and I still have heaps to do. Even though the next ones are smaller, there's more of them, so I'm not even halfway. It's the next morning, so I'll get on with them. I'll get through it though, as you've got the idea by now, and the process is all worked out. I'll just give you an idea of how small some of these pieces really are. That's all of them done, and I've decided not to lay all of these small ones out for now. So on to the next stage. The tiles will get soldered later on, but for that to happen, all of the edges need wrapping in copper foil. I made a simple holder to help with the process. It just stops the roll from unravelling and keeps a bit of tension on it. I'm trying a few out with centering them by eye. It's definitely doable, but as there's so many, I'll probably make some sort of guide to help with the process. If you thought cutting the tiles was a lot of work, then this is going to be massive. After folding the edges over, then all of the foil needs burnishing. I did a few like this and then I made a guide, so let's try that out. Hopefully it will cut down on some time. There's a shallow slot in the bottom piece for the tape to sit in and a partial slot in the top to centre the glass to the tape. Because the glass thickness isn't 100% consistent, the top slot is a little loose. I've made it that way, but it's still much easier and quicker to use than just totally doing it by eye. This may seem crazy to you, but I'm actually looking forward to getting into this part of the project. I'll get my audio book going. I'm about halfway through and I'm really enjoying it. If you're interested, this is what I'm listening to. It's an epic tale and perfect for this kind of work. That's the first row of tiles done and I started getting the hang of it by the end. The tape that I used is 5.6 millimeters wide, which is too wide for these small pieces here. I have ordered some thinner stuff, but I'm still waiting for it. So I'll get on with this top section up here and use the wider tape on those. Even though the jig is working great, I do get the odd corner like this, but it's an easy fix by adding another piece of tape on top of it. It's the end of the day and it looks like I've made good progress, but this top section is a bit deceiving. As I mentioned, all the work is in the outer section. That was a crazy amount of work and it took 2.5 days and I'm not even close to done. I can get on with the smaller tiles though, as my thinner tape arrived just in time. I've made a new slot in the guide to centre the tape, so let's get back into it. Even though these pieces are small and they really are fiddly, it's surprising how you can get the hang of it. One thing that I figured out is my thumbnail is perfect for burnishing the edges. It's much easier than trying to hold a small piece and using a burnisher. It's little things like this that make the whole process just that bit quicker. The last two elements to foil are the green band and the diamond pieces, but I've realised that they're both too small to be effective, so I'm going to remake them. There's no reason why the band can't be a touch wider, and the top triangle of the diamond can be made bigger by reducing the width of the centrepiece. I don't really know why the top triangle ended up being so much smaller than the bottom one, but anyway, I'll fix it. These ones really are extremely fiddly, but they are still doable. Anyway, that's it. They're all done. I lost track of time, but it was something like 5 or 6 days to foil them all, and that's including remaking the diamond pieces. Now on to the soldering. I did a quick test piece with a few of the spare tiles. It went okay, so let's give it a go for real. I'll tack the pieces first, then run full beads down the joints when the whole thing is together. I've hardly got anywhere, and I've realised that I've made a huge error. The tiles are too small for the design and the mould, so that decision that I made to cut the tiles on the centre line to make them smaller with some wriggle room was a bad one. The only thing I can do now is to reduce the size of the mould. I've taken measurements from a column of the tiles and from the mould, so I'll put it back on the lathe and sand some off. I've ended up taking most of the plaster off. I'll check how this piece fits, and I'll have to hope that I'm okay soldering directly over the phone. It needed a touch more sanding off, so I did that back on the lathe off camera. Now that it fits, I'll start soldering again. The one thing that works better now that the plaster has gone is I can pin the tiles in position. I'm also discarding my original plan of soldering the lamp in sections. I've lost the marked out design anyway, so now I'll solder the whole thing in place. That went well, so hopefully this will work out. I'll carry on and I'll pin the next layer in place. I spoke too soon. The next layer is too loose, so I'll put the form back on the lathe and take some more off, which should bring the tiles in and towards each other. That works much better, and I may have to just keep adjusting the mould to fit with each layer. I started tacking just the top of the tiles all the way around, and then the joints in between by pressing them down at the same time. The top tack acts a bit like a hinge, and doing it this way the tiles come together nice and tight. It's starting to look good, and I actually like the shape more, so if it does come together I won't be too disappointed. It's going together well and it's starting to look good, but before I go too much further with this top section, I need to think about the bottom layer using these tiles. If I do that next, then hopefully I can work out how to fill the tiles in between the two. I'm still not 100% sure that these will fit, and I think I need to explain that I haven't just made each tile consistently smaller. I've taken off the same amount, which is about 0.5 millimeter from each edge off each tile, which will affect the smaller tiles more than the larger ones. I think that's the case, but honestly I'm not entirely sure. Also, because the radius is a compound curve, there is a chance that these just won't physically go together. I'm hoping they do, or at least close enough. I've measured out the length of the bottom layer, and from that I've worked out with some simple maths that I've sanded too much off the form. It needs to be about 5mm wider across the diameter. I'll add a strip of mat board, then start soldering the pieces around. I'll see how that goes and add a second layer if needed. It does need that second layer of mat board, so my calculations were just about right. The next layer is a band of green tiles that are also upright, so I'll get on with tacking those in place. That's the band section done, so next I'll start on the top section again and start bringing that down. I've only put a handful of this row on and just tacked them from the top, and I can see straight away that to get them to fit, that they're not sitting down on the form, they're sort of floating a little bit. So I think next I need to build the form up, and I'll probably do that from here all the way back down to the bottom. We're starting to get somewhere now, and not far away from finding out if these pieces will all fit together. I think the worst that can happen now is having to remake the diamond pieces to fit. That wouldn't actually be the end of the world. I think the rest of them should go together fine. I need to put the mould back on the lathe for hopefully the last time and soften this edge. I also need to raise the form slightly, so I've put a piece of foam board underneath. The height looks about perfect, so let's start tacking the final pieces. Just the diamond ones left, and they do fit in place. Some are a bit looser than others, but they do all fit. It was a stupid mistake that I made making the tile smaller, but I think I got away with it. The crazy thing is I never intended to cut the tile smaller on the center line. I was just choosing the settings, and I thought in that split second, wouldn't it be good to add a bit of wiggle room, and I went for it. Anyway, I'm just happy that the whole thing came together. I reckon it's looking great. Next I'll start soldering the joints, and hopefully I don't stuff it up with the amount of work that I put into it. I'm sure I won't be doing exceptional beads, as I reckon it's an acquired skill, but hopefully I can make it acceptable. I'm certainly not doing an outstanding job of these, but I'll keep going and hopefully I'll get better and I can go back over any ugly looking ones later on. That's one roll of solder down, so there's a pound of it on there already, apart from what I've spilt. But anyway, I've got a new one. I'm about half the way round, and I started off a little bit iffy, but I'm starting to get the hang of it now, so I'll keep going. The top section isn't too bad, but the smaller pieces around the tight radius are tricky. But again, I'll just get them done and tidy them up later. That doesn't mean that I'm not trying to do them well. I really am, but I'm not going to get better without the practice. That's all the way around, but that's not it yet. I still need to do the inside. This side isn't going as nicely. There seems to be a fair amount of trap flux in the joint from soldering the first side. It's bubbling up while I'm laying down the beads, but I'll keep going and again deal with it later on. To finish the rim, I'll solder on a 3mm copper wire, which should finish it off nicely. All of the solder still needs going over and tidying up, especially that rim that I've just done. That isn't very neat at all at the moment. But next I'm going to make the top part, which I believe is called the gallery, and I'll make that from 1mm brass sheet. The Wazer did a great job again. Next I need to form it into a raised shape. I made these wooden forms and I did that on my metal lathe so I could dial in the dimensions, and that was so the two halves fit together with a consistent gap for the brass. This gives you an idea of how it will look. I'll drill a centre hole first, which will be used to centre the piece in the form. Next I'll soften the brass, and I'll do that by annealing it, which will make it easier to form. I really don't expect the wooden forms to do an incredible job, and not sure how they'll hold up, but they only need to make one part, so let's try them out. It's wrinkled up the edges more than I'd hoped. It's my own fault though for leaving too much excess on. I was playing it safe, but it would have done a neater job if the disc was closer to the final size. I've annealed it again off camera and just manually bending the rim roughly into shape, and then I'll press it again. It's still not perfect, but it's getting there. The top bit is fine, but it just needs a bit more work on the rim. I could have just bought one of these, but I really want to make the whole lamp, and even though it's not perfect, it is starting to look decent. All of the solder will get blackened with a force patina before being waxed, and even though it would blacken the brass, I thought I'd tin it with the solder first to keep the black consistent. Even though I still need to tidy the joints and blacken it, I've decided to end the video here. I'll do that along with making the base, which I haven't 100% decided on, but I think it will be a floor lamp rather than a table lamp. There'll be a bit of work in the base and some working out to do yet. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'm sure some of you think I'm crazy when I say I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I really did, and I would make another one. I'd be interested to know if this is something you would enjoy too, or whether I really am crazy. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.